I'd like to go over some housekeeping before we continue with the teaching. Our website is www.theelijahchallenge.org. There is a lot of material there. I invite you to go and visit it. There are advanced teachings and many, many different reports and testimonies of how the Lord has used servants of God who have trained with the Elijah Challenge. I'm also giving you my personal email. It's elijah003@gmail.com. The purpose of that is so that I can hear from you. I know that after you are trained, you are going to be used by the Lord to heal the sick and cast out demons. The Lord will do miracles through you, and we would love to hear your testimonies and reports. So please write us. When God uses you to do something like that, please write it, share it with us. We will be encouraged. And this is because I am a teacher, and if I hear that you are doing these things, healing the sick, casting out demons, and being used by God in such ways, then I'll be encouraged because I know that I'm doing my job properly. So please send me the testimonies. Some of the testimonies will go into the website and also into our newsletter, which is called the Elijah Challenge Herald. This is sent out by email. It's free. It's sent out each month. And it will contain more advanced teachings and testimonies and ministry updates. I'd like to give you this PowerPoint file that I'm using to teach. If you would like to have the file of this PowerPoint presentation for review and for teaching others, please give me your email address. We will send you the link where you can download this file, as well as the file of the syllabus for free. It is my joy to give this away. Freely I have received, and freely I give. Let's continue the teaching now. We saw last week that Peter stepped out of the boat and he tried to walk on water as Jesus did, but we saw that he failed. So it is not enough simply for us to step out of the boat. We must also walk on water successfully. And we're going to apply this to healing the sick. We know the Lord commands us to heal the sick as we preach the gospel to the lost. It is not enough just to try to heal the sick as Jesus commands us. It's a command. It's not a suggestion. I don't believe it's optional. When we go to preach the gospel, we should heal the sick. It's a command. So it's not enough just to try to obey his command. We need to be able to obey the command successfully. We must also heal the sick successfully to bring souls to him. This requires a change of paradigm for us. According to what we have been taught in the past, only God can heal the sick, only God can perform miracles. We are helpless, we can do nothing, and all we can do is pray and ask God to do these miracles, and we will wait and trust him. Now, of course, we do pray, we do ask God, but after we pray and ask God, if we have been given the authority to do these things, then we should do them. Fear and faith are opposites. Matthew 8:23. He got down into the boat, and his disciples followed him. Without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us. We're going to drown." Again, we see a situation in which the disciples were in physical danger, and so they cried out to the Lord, "Lord, save us." Now the question is, was Jesus pleased with their prayer? Was he pleased with their cry, "Lord, save us"? Now conventional teaching, of course, says, of course he is pleased. Whenever we say, "Lord, save us," for whatever reason, he is pleased. When we cry out to him, it means that we trust him. So whenever we say, "Lord, save us," he must be pleased. Well, let's see whether or not he was pleased in this particular situation. When his disciples were in danger of drowning and they said, "Lord, save us," was Jesus pleased with their prayer? He replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Was he pleased with their prayer? Was he pleased with their cry? No, he was not. He rebuked them. He rebuked them for their little faith. He rebuked them for their fear. So the Lord is not always pleased when we cry out to him, Lord, help me, Lord, save me. It depends on the circumstances. Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. So Jesus took action. He did save them. He did help them. He performed the miracle. How did Jesus perform this miracle? Was it through prayer? No, it was not. I'm not saying that God does not perform miracles in response to prayer, but he did not here in this situation. Jesus rebuked the winds and the waves. He spoke to the winds and the waves. He rebuked them just as he rebuked demons and infirmities. In that same way, he rebuked the winds and the waves, and they obeyed him, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. So how did Jesus do this miracle? Not by prayer, but by exercising the authority that the Father had given him. Apparently, Jesus had authority over the winds and the waves. He wanted them to calm down. So what did he do? He commanded them to calm down, and they obeyed. He simply exercised the authority that the Father had given him. The question is, what did Jesus expect them to do? He was obviously not pleased when they cried out to him, Lord, save us. So what did he want them to do? What did he expect them to do? We're going to answer this question later. We're going to go back to the incident where the disciples failed to cast the demon of epilepsy out of the boy. You recall that incident, Matthew 17:19. After the disciples failed to cast out the demon, then they came to Jesus in private and asked, why couldn't we drive it out? Why did we fail to perform the miracle? And Jesus said, he replied, because you have so little faith. Now, what kind of little faith did they have which resulted in their failure to perform the miracle? What kind of little faith? Well, Jesus says, I tell you the truth, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. What kind of little faith did they have, resulting in their failure to cast out the demon? Well, they had little mustard seed faith. They had little mountain-moving faith. That's why they failed. They had little faith of God. We have seen that mountain-moving faith and faith of God are actually the same thing. Why did they fail to perform this miracle? Because they had little faith of God. When the disciples failed to cast out the demon of epilepsy, it was because they lacked mountain-moving faith or faith of God. They doubted they could drive out the demon as Jesus had commanded them. They had doubt in their heart that they could perform the miracle. Because they had doubt in their heart, they failed. Because they had doubt in their heart, you could say they lacked faith of God. Now, this very same incident is recorded in Mark chapter 9. However, it seems to be recorded differently. Let's look at this and see if we can reconcile the account from Matthew 17 and the account here in Mark chapter 9. Let's look at the account from Mark chapter 9, beginning with verse 17. A man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. O unbelieving generation, Jesus replied, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. So far, the two accounts are quite similar. So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into the fire or the water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." So far, the two accounts do not conflict with one another. But in the next verses, this is where we see some conflict between the two accounts. Mark 9, verse 23 says, "If you can," said Jesus, "everything is possible for him who believes." Now, this is different from the account that is written by Matthew. Let's look at that. The parallel verse from Matthew 17 says, "He replied, 'Because you have so little faith. I tell you the truth. If you have faith as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you.'" Now, these two accounts of the same incident seem to be saying different things. If you look at the one from Mark, notice Jesus says, "Everything is possible for him who believes." Now, everything is possible to him who believes what? Or who believes who? Well, the usual interpretation is that everything is possible for him who believes Jesus. Everything is possible for him who believes in God, who believes in Jesus. That's the traditional interpretation. Now, Matthew says something differently. What Matthew says is, nothing will be impossible for you if you have mountain-moving faith. If you have faith of God, nothing will be impossible for you. If you have faith as a mustard seed, nothing will be impossible for you. That seems to be saying something differently from what Mark says. Everything is possible for him who believes in God, who believes in Jesus. So how do we reconcile these two seemingly inconsistent accounts? Accounts that are not consistent with one another. Well, let's look at the literal translation of Mark 9, verse 23. Literally, it's the following. "And Jesus said to him, 'If you are able to believe, all things are possible to the ones believing.'" Now, in the Greek, the word for to believe is pisteo. And it turns out that the Greek word pisteo can be translated to believe or to have faith. To believe or to have faith. Instead of using the word believe, let's put in the word to have faith. And this is what we get. "And Jesus said to him, 'If you are able to have faith, all things are possible to the ones having faith.'" Having what kind of faith? Faith of God. All things are possible to the ones having the faith of God, having mountain-moving faith, having faith as a mustard seed. Now the two accounts are consistent. All things are possible to the one who has faith of God. Nothing is impossible to the one who has mountain-moving faith. The two accounts are consistent with one another. Let's look at the one from Matthew 17:20. "If you have faith as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." So the two accounts are consistent with one another. When understood correctly, the two accounts do not conflict, but say the same thing. The important thing here is mountain-moving faith, faith of God, faith without a doubt. If you have faith without a doubt, according to Jesus, nothing will be impossible for you. Let's look at the incident where Peter sank beneath the waves and cried out to Jesus. You recall, Peter was seated in the boat. He saw Jesus walking on the water toward him. And when Jesus said, "Come," Peter also tried to walk on water. Matthew 14:31. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. This was after Peter began to sink. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Now, Peter sank because of his little faith, because of his doubt. Exactly what did Peter doubt, causing him to sink? What did he doubt? Did Peter doubt that Jesus could walk on water? No. Peter knew Jesus could walk on water. Peter did not doubt God. Peter did not doubt Jesus. Peter doubted that he himself could walk on water. And that's why he sank. Peter doubted that he could walk on water. Peter sank beneath the waves because he lacked faith of God. He doubted that he could walk on water as Jesus had commanded him. So you see, 2 times already, the disciples failed to do something that Jesus expected them to do. In the first case, they failed to cast out the demon. Why did they fail? Because they lacked faith of God. They had doubt. In this case, why did Peter sink? Because he lacked faith of God. He doubted that he could walk on water as Jesus had commanded him. We're starting to see a pattern now. When the disciples on the boat feared the wind and the waves, we studied this just a moment ago. Matthew 8:26, he replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. What kind of little faith did they have? What kind of little faith did they have?